welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 3, Episode 1, The Fourth Man, written by Juanita Bartlett and directed by William Wyatt. The episode begins at the now familiar to the series LA airport, although this time at night, as we watch a returning Sharon Glass, playing new character Laurie Genovan, who works in reservations and greets who she thinks is a frequent flyer, but who denies knowing what she's talking about.
Detroit, St. Louis, now you're coming in from Miami in 1 month?
It's your mistake.
Wasn't it about 2 weeks ago?
I'm telling you, you're wrong.
In the airport parking lot, we see her stalked by an unseen man, and it doesn't take a detective of Rockford's calibre to spot these two events are connected. Luckily, before she can be accosted, she's able to flee, thanks to a passing car. Unluckily, she drops her handbag as she runs. She calls in old friend Jim, and he comforts her, with the same sort of familiarity as he has with Beth.
In that kind of a day, huh?
She mentions her earlier encounter in passing, and Jim escorts her home. He wants to stay. She insists on being alone, thinking it was a simple robbery, but it isn't long before her airport stalker arrives and the torment begins. This is a dynamic opening that raises a lot of questions and some intriguing potential. It's written to purposely avoid clunky exposition, with her reference to her strange apparent mistake made only in passing, her unwillingness to allow Jim to stay being argued by the two, and her escape being reasonable when you consider how busy an airport car park can be. If it wasn't an episode of the Rockford Files and we had a little more setup in the beginning, it's possible the man she encounters and her stalker could be two different people. But as it's pretty obvious in this TV episode format that they are one and the same, the question becomes not who, but why. It's also perhaps a little unbelievable that she would allow Jim to leave, knowing details of her address were in her bag. And although it might be explained away as being a more trusting time, I don't think this was the case in mid-70s LA. So I would have liked the explanation as to how her home was found by the stalker to have been a little cleverer. But again, I think this is down to only having 45 minutes to tell the story. But still, Jim is a better detective than to leave her alone, and seeing him go home, rather than just park up around the corner, doesn't really help to sell this particular contrivance. This is a minor complaint that I understand the reasoning for, and is more than made up for by the intense creepiness of her tormentor's stalking of her. It's got the feel of a classic horror thriller and seems intentionally shot in this way, including a jump scare as Jim arrives to rescue her.
All right.
While getting into this situation might have been unnecessarily foolish, she doesn't act like a typical dumb horror movie character when she becomes aware of what's happening, and is able to react exactly as she should to Beth survive, which is really refreshing. Safely in Jim's arms, the stalker takes a pot shot at her before taking off. But now Laurie has seen that it was Mr. Farrell from the airport, and she's not only terrified, but incredibly confused. Things get less scary when Laurie and Jim report the incident to Dennis, although not any better, as Dennis is grumpy at being woken up rather than Jim going through the proper channels. And normally we might be at least a little on Dennis's side here, but having seen the seriousness of the situation and the excellent points that Jim makes to Dennis, it feels like he should be taking it a little bit more seriously.
Well, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but on an attempted murder, I think you could start with an APB. People kill because they don't like their zip code.
Oh, come on, how often?
Once is all it takes.
Especially with Jim's now long track record for being right. However, this would also stop the episode in its tracks, and we wouldn't get Jim on the offensive. We also wouldn't get Rocky's insistence that Jim is being reckless.
I don't like it.
Rocky, you don't even know what I'm talking about.
I don't have to. I don't like it.
Or help from Angel. Glass is given a much juicier role here than in her first appearance, despite playing a sort of damsel in distress, and actually has real agency, even if she was wrong. This in itself is used as a catalyst to go along with Jim's plan, with only a few questions asked. She isn't helpless, but she also isn't stupid or stubborn, allowing Jim to work his way. It's a fantastic feat how the show manages to give such a good and varied characterization to its guest stars. We only briefly see Angel as he finds a rental house for Jim, and instantly their whole relationship and his character are laid out for us in just a few minutes.
How much?
100 a day.
Angel.
You said it was perfect. The key is under the mat.
All right, Angel. I'm going to have a little talk with Willie. See how much of that 100 sticks to your greedy little finger.
You don't have to talk to Willie. Jimmy.
Using his Jim Taggart pseudonym, Rockford checks out Farrell's front as a seller of rare and collectible coins, but Farrell is suspicious enough to check out Jim's story, something that Jim was counting on.
I want you to call the bank. I want to talk to somebody in new accounts.
Farrell is played by John McMartin, a character actor with decades of experience, who I know best as Fletcher Gray in Frasier, but who has definitely been in something you've seen. Sure enough, just as Jim planned, someone breaks into the house Jim is using as bait. But it's Angel, who has once again made the wrong assumption and thinks Jim is running a scam. He's now in far deeper than he wants to be, as Jim plans to shoot Farrell when he breaks into Jim's rental, making it self-defense. Of course, Angel screws this up, which is probably for the best, character-wise, as while it might have been justified in the circumstances, I don't think we'd want to see Jim entrap someone in order to murder them. Now he has a positive ID, Jim can get Farrell arrested at the very least, although he has a great cover story. And with Jim using an alias, and Angel being a natural chicken, things don't go according to plan.
You see, when the lights came on, we'd been in the dark for so long, it kind of blinded me.
Angel has the very optimistic view that with a formal complaint, Farrell won't now come after Jim, although he's not confident enough to stick around to find out. So Jim has to go to Beth, as Farrell is now levelling some charges of his own at Rockford. This is a really well-structured episode so far, which always goes just far enough to be believable, as long as you can accept that the cops would be reluctant to investigate. And having previously covered the myth which police still perpetuate, that you must wait 24 hours before investigating a disappearance, I can accept that the cops might be a little reluctant to do anything. Beth questions what Farrell's motive is, and Laurie goes through her story again, but it fails to illuminate anything. What it does give us, though, is another look into Jim and Beth's complicated relationship. Having established to us that Laurie and Jim are clearly close, maybe as close as he is with Beth, we know she isn't just another client, and Beth makes it very apparent that she knows this too. The very subtle line delivery from Gretchen Corbett to Laurie as she leaves has just enough edge in it to tell us that she's jealous.
I hope we'll be seeing more of you very soon, Laurie. Thank you.
Without giving it away to Laurie, which is quickly cemented with her dialogue with Jim.
Who is she?
Old fishing buddy.
Who revels in this jealousy, and Corbett gives us a very funny out. We then see Farrell meeting someone who at first seems to be a client, then perhaps a rival, but by the end of the conversation it's revealed he's a potential obstacle to Farrell's objective of murdering someone. Having seen what we have so far, it's clear this is a regular thing, and we start to get the impression he's a professional killer, which Jim quickly confirms when he finds out hits of mobsters have taken place in all the cities that Farrell has visited on the days he was there. Unfortunately, with no proof, Dennis can't do anything, but agrees with Jim's assessment and is able to ask a few questions of Farrell.
Sergeant Becker, I'd like to see Mr. Farrell, please.
I'm sorry, he's not in.
Who is already on his next job. On a hunch, they head to the airport where Farrell has trouble of his own, being pursued and shot by the man we saw earlier, who Jim and Dennis now have to apprehend. Dennis gets wings, leaving Jim to make the more honourable shot. In the epilogue, we see Dennis being waited on by Rockford, as Rocky gets in the way of Jim getting paid.
I'd like to pay you.
Oh, no, he wouldn't think of it, no. Well,
this is a truly fantastic episode from start to finish. A few minor quibbles about some of the writing shortcuts are easily forgotten as we get everything. All 4 of our series regulars, humour, action, intrigue and some neat twists and turns. How a simple case of unmistaken identity and the desperation of a killer to keep his secret leads to his undoing is masterfully told. Having Jim come up with an unscrupulous plan because he wants to protect someone he cares about shows just how far he's willing to go in the right circumstances. And to have it undone by someone else he cares about, thus retaining his honour, shows remarkable depth for a 45-minute show. Having Beth there to just add some character development for her, all rivetingly complex for TV at this time, but hardly surprising when we see this was the first episode produced by David Chase, who would go on to create The Sopranos. It might not be to everyone's taste, but I love the way they switch out villains on us right at the end, as it not only provides one of the said twists, but also shows just how lethal organised crime can be, and how even the cleverest assassin can be erased at a moment's notice. Also, by making Farrell a mob hitman rather than some kind of globe-trotting assassin, helps to ground the story at a time when the Mafia were at one of their peaks. This is a perfectly pitched episode that has everything going for it, and is a really strong opening to Season 3. Easily 5 out of 5 for me. Thank you. Goodbye.